Hello and welcome to episode 174 of the Imperial Truth. I'm Greg. Joining me as ever is Mr. Howard. Hello, Howard.
Hello, Greg. How are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, not too bad. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Very excited for this sort of out of the ordinary show because of the particular topic of Legions Imperialis. I've been waiting for this for some time, like everyone, but it's a particularly exciting one for me.
Yeah. So the deal with this is it's an extra show. We should be back up at the end of the month or start of next month, should I say, with the next normal episode. But wanted to get this out. They keep giving us stuff with release dates in the middle of the month or pre-order dates in the middle of the month, which is most frustrating. But hey, that's life, isn't it? Before we get into that, this should when this releases, you are able to buy your Legions Imperialis things. There is some stuff that is direct order only, but there's plenty of stuff you can get from your friendly local gaming store or indeed Element Games, and you get all your good service with them and all the usual benefits of discounts and everything else that you will get from Element and all your crystals and lovely stuff. And also you can use the link in the show notes to help support the show. So thank you for anyone who chooses to do that, who can do that. Right. So this is Legions Imperialis. We were lucky enough. Games Workshop sent us. In the end, it ended up being a couple of copies of the box. So we've each got a box worth of models each. How many times can I say each? And a few cards, and did also get sent a few of the extra bits as well. The Kratos and other bits and pieces. We're going to start with the models first.
I think it seems right, really, because it's quite a crunchy game. So we'll get into that in due course. But the models are where it kind of sings, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll be doing an overview rather than a deep, in-depth review, just because of timing. Trying to get this all done, trying to read the book. Quick note, haven't played the game. Howard and I don't live particularly close to each other. Makes it a bit awkward with work and both of us having young children to be able to meet up and play the game. So, and bearing in mind, you can't just take this at my local club when we're not allowed to talk about it. That would be awkward. So we have not played the game in and of itself, but read the book, have an idea of what's going on. Models. So have you built everything?
I have built everything Solar Auxilia.
Cool.
I have dabbled with Space Marines.
I built everything Space Marines, which was my first mistake, but we'll get into that later. The models
built unusually for me. I've built and painted everything Legions.
Indeed.
Everything Solar Auxilia, which
hopefully
is
you will have seen pictures of these online so far, and
yes,
there's a chance I may even have pictures of painted things. Won't be whole detachments, but there might be the odd thing painted.
As a pro painter yourself, obviously, you prefer to paint standout pieces, don't you? Sort of showcase pieces rather than playing the game. Obviously, so like myself, tournament player. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you really you're going for the competition awards. Yeah, that's sensible. I like that. It's an approach.
Well, I've never claimed to be a competition painter. Just on the same level, sharing the same space as Angel Heraldes. That's all. So yes, the models. How were the Solar Auxilia to put together, for starters?
They were an education.
Was it just the Ogrins and the Walkers of the small stuff that was 2 parts? Or the Axemen one part?
Yes, all of the infantry, all of the human-sized guys are one piece. The only multi-part was the Ogrins and the Sentinels, but they were multi-part. They weren't 2.
Yeah.
There's quite a few bits going on with those. From what I understand, from what I've heard you say before, the Contemptors are quite a piece.
First off, The missile launchers, the arm for the missile launchers, heavy weapons, are separate. So
Awesome.
you have to glue the arm onto the model. So they're the only ones where you have to do that. The contemptors are a number of parts. The fist, the back of the fist is separate from the front of the fist. It is a tiny part. There are few as small parts in the whole of Games Workshop. We're talking up there almost with the cigar from the Orlok kit.
It's exactly. It was the no. Well, yes, possibly as well, but the Goliath was the one I remember from
Goliath. I
years
think it
ago.
was
When
Orlok.
they first released it. Yeah, it might be both. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised. Yeah, the cigar that could go in the
Not
mouth.
quite
Yeah,
as
that was
bad. Well, I mean, the problem is grey carpet, grey chair.
yeah.
I mean, tiny piece, fat fingers. There was a moment where I thought I'd lost one, but thankfully I didn't. But the kits go together surprisingly well, even with that size kind of thing. The missile launchers are a bit kind of like it's about that. I think is that going in? Oh yeah, sort of. It's glued. Cool.
I've waxed lyrical before about. I sort of had high hopes for this, but anyway, because I've been such a fan of the engineering of the kits they've done in this scale before. So particularly the standout one for me is the Thunderbolt, and I think before I mentioned it, you said the same. Putting a Thunderbolt together, you clip a couple of pieces out, you're stitching them together, you sort of blink, and you suddenly got a fully made aircraft. I was like, what? How did that happen? They're actually a genuine pleasure to build. So you thought, well, if they've been able to engineer that into that kind of scale and get it to work, I perhaps have high hopes for this. And the tanks, I would say, are similar. The engineering that goes into it and the idea of how they interlock various armor panels and hull components is impressive, as is, I'd say, particularly with the Solar Auxilia range, the range of options, which you kind of forget because these are models that typically originated as Forge World resin kits, and so had plentiful options for kind of sponson and hull-mounted weapons and turret weapons, particularly in the case of the Malcador, I'm thinking here. I mean, and the same with the Baneblade, actually. I mean, each have got 3 different weapons to put in the hull and in the sponsons. I mean, the range of options is considerable. And the Marine kits are kind of similar, I think, in that they give you plenty of options, don't they?
Yeah, decent amount of options, absolutely. Things like the Kratos come in a number of parts. You can leave the turrets separate if you want. I'm sure you could magnetize the sponsons as well. Couldn't be bothered, frankly.
On the Predators, that's a bit of a problem. You couldn't, because there's not the housing of the weapon. There's only one of those.
Yeah, but
I built the Predators, and I did them recently. And the sponson, if they have
but you can still magnetize the sponsons. You just can't make multiples from the same kit.
Spot on. Yes,
that's what I mean.
So you'd be magnetizing for transport, I suppose, at that point.
Well, no, like you might have 10 Predators and not use 10.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay.
So you can have options in that respect. I frankly couldn't be bothered. I was like, cool, this is my anti-tank Predator. That's going to have anti-tank weapons. This is my anti-personal Predator that can have bolters and whatever. And the same for Sicarans as well. But yeah, fantastic kits. Really are.
Yeah, the tanks are the standouts for me. The infantry, they've packed detail into those. They do look, particularly the Marines being that little bit bigger, the Marine characters, squad leaders and things, I thought they came out very, very well. And this is coming from someone I've got a real soft spot for all of the epic scale stuff from back in the day. It's how I got into Games Workshop with the first Games Workshop kits. It's debatable whether that was Space Crusade or whether it was Epic Eldar and Epic Space Marine kits. Back when I was very, very young and building those and trying to work out how you remove them from a sprue was a challenge, and taking arms and swords with them as they went because of the scale. This is really upped the level of detail that you get in those kinds of models, so you can see why they've gone for the size that they have and really working out what they could get on an infantry model at this scale. I think I really can't wait to see what people do with these collections and how they're going to look as an army. I think they're going to look really quite cool.
Yeah, I don't know how the solar go with sticking them on the base. You got a little bit extra room, I would think. The Space Marines, like there are a couple of times where it's like they can look really crowded on there, which is not a problem, but trying to get them to look good on the base, like just takes it's a second of thought rather than just dumping them on because you suddenly realise, oh, actually, like it looks all weighted to the back or weighted to one side because of the nature of the poses and being able to fit them in and things like that.
Something I think. Oh yeah, carry on.
The biggest issue is I built all my Space Marines before I painted them.
Exactly what I was about to come to. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And spoke to Henry from Cult and Paint, and I think he pulled one off, put it on a base, and then went, "What am I doing?" And even the GW videos are talking about their perfect paint on the sprue. I don't know. I mean, luckily for me, it's less important because I'm not a good painter and I'm not as bothered. But if you are wanting to get in and do details, then you don't want to stick 5 on a base because it's going to be hard to get in there.
I would absolutely recommend to anyone paint them on the sprue. I, like you, I steamed into it partly because I get a real satisfaction from building the models.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy building them, and then I move into painting them. So I kind of just launched into it and got a full set of the solar put together. Tanks, that's fine, obviously, but the infantry built those and then sprayed them, and was like, okay. And the thing I found was tricky is painting the base. It was painting the base and between the individual models. That was fiddly, but of course that was with the solar, who I think have got that much more space between them. And because they are physically smaller, they're not as chunky models. I think that made it a bit easier, a bit more forgiving. However, it would have 100% been easier to do them on the frame and then stick them to the bases afterwards.
So the second, any more I get, I might have to do that. But hey, these things happen.
It's what you learn, and
good.
That's why it's handy that we're doing that and sharing that with others. I would certainly recommend undercoat and your base coats and everything else. Well, basically the whole thing. Possibly do your basing with them there, but the way the models work is they've got these sort of mini bases on each individual figure, so there's just a small amount. The legs are joined together at the feet, if you like, with a little bit of base, which you then stick to the larger infantry base. It's not like Epic of old, where you have these very defined circles on there as a base, which then slotted into an infantry base in defined positions. You are free to put these models wherever you like on the 25mm base, I want to say. I can't remember. I think it is. I think it's 25. I don't think it's 28 or whatever. The infantry bases that everyone's on the same size bases. And I certainly think that's better. They look great. I think they look superior out of the box, and quite quickly are superior to the Epic models of old in terms of detail and kind of immersion. But yeah, definitely recommend painting them on sprue for the case of the infantry. Everything else, dreadnoughts and upwards, you could easily just build them and paint them in the more traditional fashion. But yeah, 100% agree.
It's quite good with the dreadnoughts. So you get 2 sets of legs, right, one for each side, and then the different weapon arms. So you can actually have a few different, they're not hugely posable without doing some work to them, but you can make them look a little bit different from each other, which is really cool. What's your favourite model from the lot? That's the question.
That is a difficult question.
So I also got the Rhinos and the Kratos as well. I mean, the Rhino's 10 on a sprue is pretty cool.
That is good. Yeah, I thought that was good. I think you are gonna want a lot of those. I'm a big fan of the Baneblade. The Baneblade has got some real heft to it. They've got a real presence to them, and the range of options in that kit, the way it looks when it goes together, and the sort of space it gives you to paint, I just think it's just a really nice size in your hand. I think it's quite a cool scale to play the game at. So yeah, I was a fan of that as a model. Malcador's surprisingly cool. It's not a tank that's hit me in the way. I know some people absolutely love that. Either others I prefer, but actually seeing it here, and it's got I don't remember the 28mm version or the full scale version having the long Vanquisher cannon. I don't remember seeing that as an option, and you do have that in this scale, and it looks really good with that style. So, but probably the Baneblade edges it for me. What about yourself?
I'm not really sure, to be honest. I really like the Venators, I think. Might be them. The plasma ones with the flat plasma is pretty cool. Pretty cool. But there's I mean, they're all
yes, the
cracking
slight
little
variation
kits.
on the Sakaran plasma thing. Yeah, okay.
What did I call them? Yeah, I didn't say Sakaran, I
Venators,
said
yeah,
Venator,
yeah.
didn't I? Sakaran, yeah. So the Sakaran with the plasmas, pretty cool. The other thing we did get sent, and I sent up to you, were the tiles.
Yes, because those
I
are
opened
part
them
of because
quickly and sent them up. You're the tile man. What do you think?
they're an interesting prospect because this is following in the footsteps of Games Workshop doing similar tiles for Necromunda. They're the same idea of 12-inch square, 1 foot tiles.
Yeah.
This is a pack of 6 rather than a pack of 4 that they did there, and it's a set of roads in different arrangements, so you can make up your own battlefield. I like them. They've got some detail on, and they are sort of give you. I'm a big fan of a modular board. I'm a big fan of sculpted boards. I think they look cool. However, it is a very long story, but I did a few years ago pick up the Forge World terrain boards. These are the much bigger 2-foot square when they still made them. They haven't made them for a while now. And those were very rich. They were for Titanicus, and they are highly molded. They have the buildings cast into them, and again, much bigger streets and things for that working. Actually turned out to, while they look incredible as a game surface for Titanicus in particular, but they were sort of tricky. They were when you compare that with a mouse mat or any kind of mat, really, that was actually arguably a nicer gaming surface. That said, molded game surfaces, I think, just look so much cooler, particularly when you work into them and get some really cool paint jobs with them. That said, what's really good with those molded game surfaces is having sort of level changes and things like that, which these, at least in this release, don't have. Perhaps these are just providing a base, putting things on, but they're probably superior to sort of a series of cardboard tiles or something like that. So yeah,
Which
kind of depends what you're after.
They're direct only, aren't they?
They are.
That's right. At £70 a set. For the recommended 5x4 table, you would need 4 sets, but not use 4 of the tiles. So 2/3 of that last set. So it's £240 for a full table. Is, for me, too expensive.
For a completely flat set of tiles as well. It's not giving you.
Even then, like, it would have to be something pretty special for me to want to spend 240 quid. I think I kind of get that the height you're going to get from the buildings and things like that. I don't really have a problem with that. They're cool. I just don't think they're £240 for a table cool. Obviously, those 4 extra tiles allow you to play a 6x4. So, if you want to do that, crack on kind of thing. Heard people talk about having a few of them and maybe blending them in or utilizing them with other sets. Cool. For me, I'm going to find an urban mat, I think.
Yeah, and I think I could see why people do that. I don't think these tiles give you quite enough over a mat to justify their additional expense, which is a long-winded way of saying I agree with you.
I mean, it's nice to have the flexibility to move the tiles around and set up different boards. It's absolutely, it's really cool. But
I think it is,
sure
as long as I think it is, but then you kind of have to have different tile types. I don't think it's enough to say I've got a slightly
some without
different
some
road
roads
network.
Would be nice.
Yeah, exactly. Or some that are changing terrain, like the difference between coming to the outskirts of a city or something, and it's changed, or even some changing into a port, or some changing into a desert, or whatever.
And for the price of
that would be a thing.
For the price of 4 of those, I can get 2-3 mats, and those 2 or 3 mats, I can. You don't have to fight in a city.
Exactly.
Those kind of things as well. So, yeah, cool. Not for me. A bit too expensive. Not quite good enough for the investment. Legions, the cards probably sold. Unfortunately, GW and cards means by the time you listen to this, they might be sold out.
Probably, weirdly though, it's one of those things that, having come from the previous editions of the game, I'm weirdly really, really keen to get these because there's such a nostalgia hit of the other ones. I'm going to need these.
They're useful. Like, having quick reference cards is always useful. The other issue I have with cards is it means GW aren't keen to update the rules, which would mean printing new cards. Other companies don't mind that. I wouldn't mind that. If you told me tomorrow that Titanicus 2nd edition was coming out and they needed to reprint all the weapons cards with different points values and a few little changes, cool. I'll drop some money on it. It's not a problem. It's not a big investment to get a few packs of cards relatively. And if it provides a better gaming experience, I would be up for that. Games Workshop are reluctant to change those things, and I understand why, because some people will be less keen to. I've just bought these and now I have to buy new cards. They're out of date. I get that, but we'll see. And they've got to have them in stock. You've got to be able to get hold of them as well. So.
I think that's a particular issue with a system that has Titanicus is in an interesting position because everyone uses the same set of cards. You don't actually need that big a collection. Whereas, I mean, the immediate comparison I think of is the Game of Thrones miniature game, Song of Ice and Fire. That absolutely, you can't play that game without the unit cards and the tactics decks that go with it. So you have a hand of cards that you play alongside the miniatures game. That gets updated fairly frequently, and it renders your cards useless. So you have to buy packs of cards kind of going forward. If you play all of the factions or a large number or whatever, that adds up quickly. They even did, at one of their events, they did like these holographic versions of the cards, which they invalidated within about 2 months of those going out. And people were spending hundreds of pounds to get these, and then finding they were out of date because literally that's people who were collecting the whole thing. So it's like you take that over into like say 40k or something like that. If you played multiple factions and you required the cards, I could understand a reluctance. Titanicus is really well positioned where you could actually just have a relatively small collection of cards and replace those like 3 or 4 packs, and you're good to go. These are nice to haves, but they're not essential.
Yeah, it's Games Workshop go one way with it, other companies go another way with it. I think there's a happy medium in there somewhere, but hey, we'll see. We'll see what happens going forward.
I really want to see these. I hope they are. Knowing the way the team perhaps who've been working on this, I would imagine they're going to be nods to the type of cards that you saw back in Space Marine and Titan Legions days. And
I remember what they were like. They've got the information on them for detachments. They've got the points on them. Like Titanicus. It consists of X, cost X points. Add 1 tank plus 40 points, add 2 tanks plus 80 points, that kind of thing. But anything written cards GW are reluctant to change, which also means changing rules as well. But hey, that's models, that's supplementary stuff. Let us have a look at the game. First thing about this book, it feels it's somewhere between Adeptus Titanicus and Heresy in that it feels more easy to read than Heresy, but looks like they made an effort to. It's not tournament level kind of thing, but there's little sidebars that make things quite clear. I haven't come up against much stuff now. There's been things where I'm like, okay, where they've just reiterated stuff or made sure that things are resolved. And I'm sure there's going to be other issues like Overwatch and timing. There's a whole 4 paragraphs there, but they're easy to read and it feels quite simple, but it's just a clarification. Combat versus engaged, tracking activations. It just feels well written.
I think it feels like if certainly the parts you've described there, I thought it felt like someone's thought that through and is writing, having played it through a few times and perhaps witnessed people playing it for the first time and gone, okay, that's a tricky point. Let's explain it.
I'll tell you where maybe it stands out a little bit more, where it goes a little bit further. Page 37 has a section called base size and figure counts, and it details if you have different models on bases, if you don't have enough models on a base, if you have too many models on a base, if you have put a model on a different base size, that kind of thing. You should basically make allowances to make it work like it should do. So if you put 4 models on the base, there should be 5. If at any point it's relevant, which that probably isn't, then you should treat it as the 5 models that should be on that base. If you've put a model on a base that's 1 size up, at any point that becomes relevant, then you treat it as the base that it should be on, not as the base that it is on. So that kind of thing, which just seems like they've gone, okay, this could be an issue. Here's the easy way to do it. Now, is that going to come up that often? Probably not. But it's clarified. It's not ambiguous this way. Like, this is how you should deal with that situation. Now, as I said, we haven't played the game, haven't had this book for a huge amount of time. Therefore, maybe there are issues that they've missed. There are going to be issues they've missed. It's a new game. Every game's the same. But it looks like they're on it more than maybe they have been with some other books.
Considering how crunchy this game could be, and certainly older iterations of Epic had that criticism.
Yeah.
And I think criticism is a fair thing to say. This does look like there's been considerable effort to make it approachable.
Yes, that's a good
game like this, and I think that's the right way. There's a clarity to it that you don't immediately think, "Oh my goodness, I need to really get my head into this before I can even engage with it." And I don't. As you say, I think there's been a real good effort of that, and I think it's at least on some level succeeded. I do. Funny that you should mention Overwatch. When I was reading over that section, I do wonder, and I'm itching to play some games to see how things like that shake out, because the timing of it is crucial. Where you are it allows
but
you
it's
to
not
interrupt
because of that Overwatch and timing aspect. It's not.
And I thought the explanation of it, but I'm
it's
not
like
so
old
sure.
Necromunda. You move from point A to point B. You can shoot at any point in that. If anything that's moved from point A to point B, if you can see a channel at some point, you can shoot everything that's moved. And you don't have to stop them midway.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's how I was wondering. I wanted to see what your take was.
If the target leaves an area of terrain, crosses open terrain, enters a new area of terrain, all of which are visible and within range, the detachment can choose to fire its target when it is in open terrain, avoiding negative modifiers due to terrain. But you've moved them.
So, for example,
but you choose
extending
to
that
fire
example,
at them when it's clear.
But extending that example, I've got 4 tanks. I've moved them, as you say, from behind the building across a street to the other side, and at the start point and end point, they're out of line of sight. But they would have had to have moved through line of sight to get where they're going. Does that mean I can target all 4?
Yes. In such case, it is presumed the overwatching detachment catches its target in the midst of movement when firing to determine how many models would cross into line of sight of the overwatching models during the detachment's movement. This is what I'm saying. It's clear.
Could you stop your movement? So you start moving across. Someone says, right, I'm overwatching them. Could you then stop and say, actually, I'm going to hold these 3
back?
No,
because you have to move into unit coherency.
That's how you get around it. Gotcha. Okay.
And I haven't, must be a shoe, but the further eligible target called Overwatch. Which is completing its activation. So, because of that rule, you just don't mention you're going to Overwatch until they finish moving.
And then you do it. Got it.
And then you do it. Yeah.
And did you say that's relatively clear? Actually, I'm being particularly pedantic over that. I don't think that's a reasonable thing. I want my questions there. I think are being particularly awkward. It comes over very well.
I think that will come
up. Over well.
Once you read it properly. It then becomes, okay, cool, that's how it works. And they've taken the extra kind of, this is what I'm saying, they've taken those extra 4 paragraphs to kind of outlay it, and it's done in a way which isn't too wordy, which sometimes heresy can be. But to me, it seems clear. I've read it quickly. Maybe there are issues, blah, 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 blah. But, there we go.
They also, I quite like how they just straight up acknowledge that some of it can get complex. The combat phase, I'm looking at it now, the 2-page spread of combat phase, great little diagrams. And it just straight up explains, here's a basic example. And it takes you through 3 or 4 steps and it ends up with one that says, and here's like a complex example where 4 different detachments are interacting in combat and it could get quite difficult to kind of work out.
This game isn't pretending to be 40k or Age of Sigmar, and I don't say that in a negative way. They are more straightforward games. It's not pretending to be Warcry or those kind of games. It's like there's a bit of something in here. It's not simplified or anything like that.
No.
Okay. Right. So playing the game, we have 5 rounds. Order phase, initiative phase, movement phase, combat phase, end phase. Some of these rounds are very, very quick, depending on what goes on. We'll start at the beginning. Orders. So, a classic thing for the old school games. 1, 2, we've got 5 orders here. You issue orders secretly, and then once everyone's got orders, you reveal them. Nice and simple. And 1 order per detachment. That's it.
Do you place them? You're placing secret orders, obviously. Are you doing that alternately, or do you just work your way through your army?
No, it doesn't matter because they're all secret.
Good.
Literally, you just place all your orders once all players. Let me just double check actually.
That's what I wondered.
Yeah,
I think it is.
An order is issued.
Yeah. It would be a bit poker face otherwise.
There's no point. There's absolutely no point in
you're placing a secret thing. No, exactly.
So everyone has to be given an order, and they're all secret,
including units that are off the board.
Yeah, or off the board or what have you. Yes. Nice. Once all players have issued an order, turn them all face up. Bosh. And that's the order stage ended. It's really simple. If you if you forget to put an order down, they're given the advance order. Simple as that.
Yes.
Again, nice simple thing. Like, what do we do if? Oh no, well, tough luck. You don't get a choice. You get an advance order, which is a basic order.
It doesn't feel like it punishes you too hard. You say,
No,
"Oh, sorry,
exactly.
I forgot," and someone's like, "Oh, obviously I was meant to do this." Well, sorry. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but yeah, you can't also take advantage and go, "Oh, I forgot. Oh no, that unit's on a march order. Okay, I will go on a charge order."
Yeah,
so, nice and simple. First fire orders. You get to fire first during the combat phase, but cannot move during the movement phase. Simples. So you're giving up movement to shoot earlier in the turn. Advance is the kind of basic one. As you say, you can move a number of inches up to your movement and may fire in the advancing fire stage of combat. And it's the only order that can be given to units which aren't in coherency for any reason. And broken units as detachments as well, and we'll cover that. March order, you can move a number twice its movement characteristic unless you're entirely infantry and not embarked on a transport. Then you can move 3 times. Simples, but you may not
that's
fire.
Quite good. This game,
yes,
or epic games in the past, it used to be infantry used to take forever to get around places, which could be painful.
And infantry are important in this game for holding objectives, things like that. So they need to be able to move around the table, and it encourages people to bring infantry, which is good. Charge orders, nominally the only way you can get into combat, into hand-to-hand combat, and move a number of inches equal to its movement characteristic, or it can charge. If you charge, you twice your movement so long as at least one model within a detachment ends in base contact with the enemy model. May not fire during the first fire or advanced stages. And a detachment is engaged and pinned at the start of the order phase, and that's important, cannot be issued with a charge order. And you add 1 to your fight rolls you make when you're issued with that order, as long as you have moved at least 1 inch during the previous turn. There we go. And you can give charge orders to broken detachments.
Something I looked up when I was reading through these is you can measure ranges and distances at any time for anything.
Can you? Now, where does it state that?
It states that.
It's a good call, because I was looking for that. Because the shooting
measuring
part,
distances, page
it is
39.
Of course it is. I must have skipped past it, because the shooting, what page is that?
Page 39.
You've got 39, okay. So the shooting phase suggests that you choose what you're firing at and then measure. Where does it say this? You can measure distances whenever they wish during the course of a battle. Okay, cool, perfect. I should have checked there, shouldn't I, really? Yeah, so pre-measuring's all in, which generally is a good thing, I think, for a game like this. Titanic.
I mean, it might affect some of your poker face, some of your side game that you're playing when you're there measuring, and you're measuring what is quite clearly twice the movement distance of your infantry to something over else, thinking, what secret order shall I put down here? But I mean, that's part of fun, isn't it? You can bluff people with that as well. I mean, that's all part of it. But I do like that's part of it here, that you just, one of the conditions of charging, because it's not random, like a lot of other Games Workshop games where there is a random element of charging. Because it's not random, you can only charge if you are within twice your movement.
Yeah.
So you won't know that without pre-measuring. So the fact that mechanic's there just makes
you can give a charge order hoping the enemy comes within charge distance.
Absolutely.
Because it's alternating activation.
It does come over quite quickly, reading through this, how important the movement phase is going to be.
Always. Yeah, I mean, it's the most important phase in almost every single game anyway.
Almost, but particularly so with this. The orders and movement phase are going to be absolutely, I mean, it really hits home, doesn't it, how movement in this is going to be captured.
Almost any objective-based game, which Games Workshop generally are now. Okay, and the last order is a fallback order. Certain situations, failing morale may require them to get a fallback order. and you remove any other orders they've got and replace it with this one. You can't voluntarily issue it, and it's got its own things. It can't activate in any other phase apart from the end phase. Sorted. Nice and easy. If you've got a morale value of dash, you can't get a fallback, so you're fearless, effectively. Along those lines, if we use other parlance. That is the orders phase. You literally choose one of 4 orders, because the fallback order cannot be given, and you place it down, and then you reveal them. And they become relevant later on. Obviously, picking orders is going to become a really important part of the game as well. Initiative phase. Roll off. Whoever wins gets initiative. If you tie, the player who didn't have it last time gets it this time. Simple. Sorted. There we go. That's half the phases done. And the movement phase is not. It's interesting, but it's not overly complicated. You take it in turn, starting with the player with initiative to choose and activate one of your detachments. So detachments are what you purchase models as. Detachments then form formations. So detachment is essentially a unit in any other game, but can be mixed to different things. Blah 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 blah. So, yep, you take it in turn. Movement is 360, with the exception of few exceptions, Titans being one of them. 2-inch coherency. Can move through friendly models, which is quite an interesting thing. Makes it nice and easy. I don't think you lose much. I think it represents the scale of the game you're playing at, that you just slide through other formations, other detachments.
Other enemy models have a 1-inch engagement range, don't they? They call it the engagement zone, which you can't move through. Yeah.
No, you can, if they are of a lower scale than you.
Oh, of course. Right.
So you can't end your movement within 1 inch unless you've issued a charge order. But you can move through sufficiently smaller units.
And they just have to be a lower scale than you. If you are equal, then you can't. Yeah. Okay.
Your 5 infantry bases are not going to stop a warhound from walking through you.
No.
It's not going to happen. So movement is very free in this game in that respect. More than some other games. But that's cool. Saying that, if you're engaged and pinned, you can't move. You can pile in things like that. But the basic engagement range is being within that 1 inch.
Yeah.
I won't go into it too much, but there's engaged and pinned. And essentially engaged and pinned is when there's big stuff there, and then you're much more restricted in what you can do.
It's a differentiation that exists to allow things of different scales to interact correctly, if you like. I.e., it allows big stuff to do what it wants to do, and let smaller stuff say, I'm going to struggle here.
What is
That's
interesting,
kind of what it's there for.
Yeah. So, So if you're engaged with a unit and have a charge order, you can't move and then move back into the detachment you're engaged with to get the +1, but you can move to become engaged with a different enemy detachment as long as you leave the engagement zone that you're currently engaged with. So someone can charge you and you can charge off. So that's something that quite interesting, and that's why engaged and pinned becomes important, because if you're engaged and pinned, there's little you can do.
Can you? Because you can't voluntarily fall back, can you?
Nope.
No. So if someone's engaged and pinned you, you're there until one of you wins a combat.
Or they move off, because it's only not always both units are engaged and pinned.
True. No.
I can pin your unit and then walk off. An engaged and pinned detachment, while issued with a charge order, move order, advance order, may make pile-in moves. So you can move into combat and do things like that. And you can, multiple engaged attachments, all that kind of thing. And then there's Overwatch. And we talked briefly about how Overwatch works. You can do it if you're on an advance order or a first fire order, and basically counts as you're shooting. Once the Overwatch has been resolved, this is quite interesting. So once an Overwatch has been resolved, controller player removes the firing detachment's order token. It's no longer issued with that order and cannot be activated. Basically, you need an order token to be activated. At certain points, your order tokens get removed, and therefore they can't. It's a good way of showing that a unit detachment cannot be activated again. So there are some instances where you might flip over. You might be able to, because you can move, and then you can shoot with an advance order. But you can't necessarily. If you then Overwatch in the movement phase, then you obviously can't shoot again. So it's a good way of showing that that unit has been used up, basically.
I was quite surprised. I was quite surprised that.
I will say Overwatch order. While we're on Overwatch, it's -2 to hit. So Overwatch comes at a reasonable cost, but the opportunity might be worth it.
I was surprised.
We can all think of. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, it's also related to Overwatch. I was surprised that units on advance order can Overwatch. I thought that was going to be something that was locked to first fire, but actually, it's as you say, it's advance order as well, which I think gives you quite a bit of flexibility, but at the cost of it being -2, which I think is fair.
Yeah, I think with the -2, it makes sense. And what it also does is stop particularly fast armies being able to dominate the game by being, hidden out of sight and never being able to be targeted, which not only can be powerful, but more importantly, could be a negative play experience. If there's like a huge assault army and it can get 3/4 of the way up the board and you can never see it because of the way terrain lays out, then that can cause problems. So, yeah, I like it. It means you can shoot someone if they're charging you, that kind of thing as well, which is not a bad thing. Combat phase. So this is where most of those rules then come in. Excuse me. First fire fires first in the combat phase. This is why you can't move. You're getting to do your damage before the enemy can do their damage. Nice and simple. If you're engaged in pin, you can't activate. But there's very little else. You get to shoot. Cool. You have first fire, engagement, and then advancing fire. So engagement is then close combat, close quarter fighting, which is where things get really, really exciting and dangerous.
Yes.
It's an interesting. I can't remember. It's been so long since I played old Epic. I can't remember how combats worked. Was it similar?
It was.
It was.
This is similar. Like you say, I mean, this is, goodness me, probably getting on for 30 years. When this edition of something that was similar to this with this style of orders was around. So Space Marine 2nd edition, Titan Legions. It's that kind of era of dynamic, and that worked with the orders and engagement like this and close assault factors. The newer, more recent editions of Epic, so Epic 40,000 and Epic Armageddon, which followed it, didn't have that. They did it rather differently. This is more like that original version, and it seems to be on the basis of sort of pairing up, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So if you've played Lord of the Rings, it works very similar to that. Every model that's in base contact with another model, you have to be in base contact to fight. You basically pair off. Yeah, if you've got 4 models and they're all touching each other, you split. Two friendly, 2 enemy. Split them down the middle. Split it into 2 separate fights, and you do that as evenly as possible across the whole combat. If you're then left with 2 models into 1, then that guy's got 2 dudes to fight. If you've got a model who's touching 2 bases and they already have like 1 base, so you've got 3 models and 2 enemies, and they're all, the 3 are touching the 2. The person with initiative, I believe, chooses who fights, which fight he's going into. Just nice and easy resolution for that. Even if you've got multiple units involved, you still try and pair off 1 and 1. And where you can't pair off 1 and 1 because of not touching, then you collect as evenly as possible as you go through it. Sounds complicated, can get a little bit fiddly at times, but generally it's pretty fine. You can even just pull them apart and ever so slightly to show that they're paired off against each other. And then the player with initiative decides the order that you resolve those fights in as well, just in case it's relevant.
I do think the way they've explained it, with the photographs of examples and the way it's written, I do think it's quite good. Yeah,
no, it's all seems pretty simple for me. And then after that, we have the advancing fire stage, which you take it in turn for everyone else basically to shoot if you're not engaged and pinned. There we go. Fairly simple.
Yeah.
Fairly simple. How you do damage is the important thing. So firing, no split firing, unless there's a special rule. So detachments into detachments. So if you've got 10 Lehman Russ and you're firing into 2 stands of infantry, you're only going to kill 2 stands of infantry most. This is where it says measure distance after declaring targets, because you then measure to see what's in range, but that's irrelevant. You can't target engaged and pinned models. You can target engaged models unless it's but you're a -1 to hit unless you're 2 scale above that unit. So that's an interesting thing. Again, where engaged and pinned becomes an important factor. There's.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay.
What's interesting?
I was just reading the example there about different scales engaged with things. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so if you're engaged with something that's quite close to you in scale, then there's a -1 modifier. But if it's infantry surrounding a Titan, there is no modifier.
No, nice, clean hit roll. Quite simple, like cover rules. Basically, Knights and Titans can get cover from being obscured, but that's the only obscuring kind of rule. It's -1 to hit, nice and simple. The player who controls the unit being shot at chooses where the hits go and makes saves relevant to the model. So if you've got multiple different, if you've got Terminators and Power Armor in a unit, you can choose whether to take it on Terminators or the Power Armor and then take the relevant saves until the unit dies. Armor penetration values affect your saves, so +1, -1, +2, -2, whatever. With -2 for armor penetration. There are ways to get pluses to armor saves. So that's different from Heresy. And we're not dealing with huge saves either in this game.
No.
A lot of the time. But what's really interesting is a natural 1 or a natural 6 are not automatic failures or successes. So if you're firing at a tank with a 2+ save and you don't have sufficient weaponry that deals with tanks and they get a +1 save because of that, you can't hurt that tank. And obviously the other way around, if you've got a light tank that's been hit by a huge Titan weapon, then tough luck, you don't get a save. But the automatic saves is quite an interesting one, because I was surprised when I looked at detachments about how few wounds stuff have. I expected to see more wounds across the board.
Particularly on the big stuff.
Yeah.
Particularly on the big stuff, I was expecting that to be to appear to be tougher. Although from what I hear, unless you've got stuff that's dedicated to deal with
you need the right,
stuff, yeah.
And this is it. I've seen people talking about the battle report, and I haven't watched it, and they were like, "Oh, the Warhound seemed really tough," and I'm like, "Well, if you haven't got the right kind of weapons, you're going to struggle to deal with it."
Yeah.
But there, it's about picking the right weapons for the right jobs and making sure you've got redundancy in that as well. What I like is vehicles, super heavy vehicles, Knights and Titans that are hit in the rear, and that's literally done center line of the model. You get +1 AP, so you can be rewarded for maneuvering around a target. And there are things like invulnerable saves in there as well. Nice and simple. And we've got combats, as we started to talk about. Pair of the models, play with initiative decides. Roll 2d6. So say we've got infantry versus infantry. Roll 2d6. Add your CAF, as they call it. Was it combat? What's it called again?
Combat assault factor. I should know this.
Yeah, something like that. CAF. Add the CAF. And any other modifiers like charging. Highest wins and causes a wound. No saves allowed. Combat, hand-to-hand combat is brutal.
Close assault factor.
Close assault factor. That's right. So yeah, combat's brutal. Yeah, your Terminators with their real good saves, tough. Like if you lose that roll off, obviously they've probably got a higher close assault factor than regular power, Marines and whatever. What's really interesting is so if I've got a Terminator and you've got 4 Ogrins around him, you choose one of your Ogrin bases to fight my Terminator. If I win and survive, your guy dies, or doesn't die if we draw. You move on to the next dude and fight against my Terminator. But you get an additional d6, so you're rolling 3d6 to my 2d6 plus your close assault factor plus modifiers. And that can go up to 6d6. And that becomes important because
it's brutal.
Because it means you can take down big stuff with littler stuff, particularly if some dice rolls go a bit skew. Yeah, really good. And then you literally, to see who's won the combat at the end of that, you literally add up the most fight wins, and the loser takes a morale check. And if they fail it, they withdraw. And so the morale checks are a single d6 roll. So you'll have a value like Space Marines might be 3+. Roll a dice on a 3+, you succeed. If your formation's broken, you roll 2d6 and pick the lowest. So
if you pass your morale check, you're staying in combat and you're fighting in combat next round.
Yeah. If you fail it, you withdraw, move through units. What's interesting, if you move through enemy detachments for any reason, kind of falling back, then you have to make each model that moves through an enemy detachment or more has to make a save roll for each detachment they move through. So each model. So if there's a whole unit behind you, you could end up making 5, 10, save rolls. If there's 2 detachments, you could end up making 20 save rolls. It gets brutal. But that whole...
Yeah, particularly as armor is not high, as you say in this.
No.
The armor values are commonly 5s, 4, 5, 6, that sort of thing. It's not 2s and 3s.
So for all that combat is the more complicated aspect, it's actually quite simple once you know what you're doing. I think the initial is people who played Lord of the Rings and remember teaching, when I worked at GW, it takes a while to get used to, how do these split up? This guy's, who does he go? How does this work? Once you've played a number of times, cool, split them up, boom, 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 boom. Okay, what do you want to do with this guy? You've got initiative. Okay, he can go there. Okay, this guy's got 3, that guy's got... And it rewards you for the way you move your models then as well. You can engineer the combat's how you want them to be, if you've got enough movement and all those other things that go with it.
It does appear that the core mechanics that we're going through here, and we pretty much put through all the phases there, are relatively straightforward. Combat looks the most complex
Involved
on paper, but actually, as you say, it's not really, which I think is a good thing, because the complexity has been added through the special rules.
Yeah,
and
there
the
are lots of them.
interactions, the special rules.
Yes. So morale. We've talked about broken detachments, formations. Sorry, before, or broken detachments. Broken is a rule that attaches to the formation, which is an interesting one. So you have a break point, which is equal to half the total number of models within the formation at the start of the battle. So your army can have multiple formations. Basically, you've got 10 tanks and 20 infantry in a formation. Cool, your breakpoint's 15, which is half of 30. If you're at breakpoint, and Titans and Knights add their wounds rather than number. So a Knight with 2 wounds, if you had 4 Knights on top of that rather than 30, you've got 4 Knights, 38. 19 is your breakpoint. And if you reach breakpoint, basically it's -1 to morale checks. And may only be issued with advance or charge orders in any of the following order phases. So if you've already got an order, it doesn't change that, but following phases you can only give them that. And they say morale check is made 1 harder, and you're broken even if you get models back for any reason or wounds back.
Yeah, there's no coming back from that, is there? No.
No, and you only take 1 morale check a phase. You can also take a morale check if you lose. Sorry, yeah, this is right. If you lose 50% of a detachment suffers casualties equal to 1/2 or more, rounding up, of the number of models. But that's done by detachment each individual shooting. So a detachment shoots another detachment, 10 models, kill 5, take a morale test. If you kill 4 and then another detachment shoots and kills 1, well, you count as having 6. You start again, basically, after each resolution of that shot.
Oh, okay. So it's just in one round of shooting.
Sure. Well, it's each activation. That's the word, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm just going to tell you. Once enemy
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think I agree with that interpretation.
Yes. trying to check myself. So again, nice and simple. And if you fail your morale, you replace your order with a fallback order. Again, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And that all comes into play then in the end phase, which again is a very quick phase. If you've got a fallback order, you must retreat. You must fall back. Once you have fallen back or fled, you can then make a roll to see if you can rally. So fleeing models must move directly towards the controller player's battle edge, can move through models, take wounds and things like that. Must maintain coherency where possible, all that kind of thing. There is a point that if you ever can't make it back into coherency, like in Age of Sigmar and 40k, you've got to basically take models off until coherency is formed. So if there's a big split in your unit and there's a 3-inch gap between 2 sets of 5 models, you got to take 5 models off until you've got that coherency back.
If you could punch through a line of stuff and separate them, you are doing some serious damage.
Absolutely. And that's not, again, super simple. Won't happen a huge amount of times.
No.
But lethal if it does. So if you then rally, you remove your fallback order, which means at the start of the next round, you can You can make orders, but if you fail it, your fallback order remains and cannot be replaced. So you can't give orders to fleeing units. And then you take flyers off. And then you remove all order tokens and any things that end in the end phase. And then you count for victory points, and that is a turn.
It's not a lot to it, is it? And it's alternating activations. Obviously, it's kind of goes with it. It goes without saying as we've gone through it, but that's still obviously something that Titanic has done for forever, and it's carried on with this. And I think that goes very well with this style of game, rather than move everything. I mean, these mass games like this that would be pretty brutal. That keeps everyone in the game.
I mean, I remember my first game of. Would it be Space Marine? I just got shot off by a squat army, like turn one. I had everything in rhinos, and they destroyed rhinos, and everything died, and it was game over. Turn
and that
one.
was the game.
Yeah, pretty much. Had very little left to fight with. But this kind of scale of game definitely suits itself more to alternating activations. There's arguments for 40k, and I kind of see why and kind of agree with that they've kept it the way they have. It would be, you could turn 40k alternative activations, but it would become a very different game.
Yes.
And that is the basic rules. Beyond that, we've got things dealing with cover, which again is quite simple. Like, there are just different types of terrain. Like difficult terrain, every inch takes 2 inches. If you're in it, you're -1 to hit. But if you're partially in terrain and partially out of it, you can choose to shoot the models that aren't in terrain to ignore the -1. There's difficult obstructing, and obstructing is difficult plus. It's a better cover save, difficult 6+. This is 5+. If you're more than 1 inch from the edge, you cannot be seen. You can't see into the terrain, but if you're in the terrain, you can see through the terrain to other units within the terrain. That kind of thing. Dangerous. You take hits for walking through it at AP0.
I feel like the terrain rules are going to benefit hugely from a quick reference sheet.
Yes.
I think you tend to get fan ones made up, but I mean, there's one included in the box as well. Stuff that just summarises that. This is going to be fine.
I think generally there's not a huge amount in there, so I think you're right, but I also think you will get used to it. Like rivers aren't going to appear very much.
No.
Difficult terrain is your base. Obstructing has additional rules and is difficult. Dangerous is pretty simple. Obstacles, pretty simple. What will be interesting is remembering what type of terrain is what on the table. Like, you just have to make sure you're like, is that difficult terrain, or is that obstructing terrain, is that dangerous terrain, and being clear with what terrain is what. But again,
the ability to interact with that terrain, though, in terms of being able to destroy it, attack it and destroy it, is unusual, and I think will add a really cool element to this game. And I don't think it's overly complex either. I mean, it's a couple of pages of rules of different things and types and how that's going to work, but I think that's going to add quite an extra dimension to this game that I don't think is really there in most of the games that I think of.
No, you're absolutely right. On top of that, we have, so those are the base kind of terrains, so there's cliffs and whatever, but then you have structures, and structures are the interesting one. So they've got examples in there, 4 examples listed. Basically, structures can be garrisoned by units, which is cool. You can move into them, take them over. They have armor saves. They have wounds. They provide cover saves to the units inside them, and they provide bonuses in whether you're being shot or fighting in combat as well. So your Civitas Imperialis, which is imperial buildings, like standard buildings. Garrison number of 1, the maximum number of detachments which can garrison the structure. So 1 detachment can go in there. It has 2 wounds with it, say armor save of 5. It provides a cover save of 4+. And while you're in there, you're -2 to hit, and you've got +2 to your close assault factor.
Mm.
Simple,
-2 to hit is a big deal.
Absolutely, they're all -2 to hit. To be fair,
they are, but I mean it's huge, isn't it? In terms of just being able to have it for infantry, keeping things alive. You're going to want to be all over terrain.
So you've got like Militia Imperialis, which has got a better armor save. Imperialis Grandus is just basically bigger, so it has same amount of wounds, but is actually and garrisons more, but is lower armor save than the militias. And then the fortifications 2-up armor save. You can only put 1 unit in there, but the 2-up armor save is pretty good. Provides a 3-up save. The problem with garrison stuff could be really powerful. You could put some heavy, heavy weapons teams into those buildings. Awesome. You're thinking great. However, those structures can be damaged, and when they're damaged and die, they collapse. And if any models were garrisoned within a structure, each model automatically suffers an automatic hit and makes a save roll as normal. It's got an AP of -1. If you save it, you're destroyed regardless of the number of wounds you have. So, yes, you can go and stand in that structure. However, if the enemy has the ability to do, say, 2 wounds, 3 wounds, 3 wounds, 2 wounds, again, we're not talking many wounds, even with a 2+ save for the fortification, 2 wounds. If they destroy it, you're taking some pain. So...
And I'm guaranteed there's going to be weapons. Well, we know there's already weapons in this that are going to be pretty well. That are specialised in destroying buildings. Are going to be even more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, if they're shooting at buildings and stuff, they might not be shooting your big tanks. So, it's all that kind of stuff as well. But it means that if there's objectives near those things, you can put in the garrison. Yeah, cool. Just welcome someone to come in and charge you with your +3 to your close assault factor. It's going to make potentially a big difference in that respect. But it gives you an option of getting in there. Again, we talked about if you want to keep the infantry alive and you're facing off against a lot of anti-infantry weapon, which is pretty basic. Cool, jump them in the building, get that cover save, and get that -2 to hit. Right, and it's going to keep them alive. And then, you're going to have to send in the right people to take them out, which, works narratively as well, which is really cool. So I think that, without having played it, it looks fairly sensible. I say, big caveat on not having played it. Titans are really simple, much simplified from AT, no surprise there. They can move in straight lines, but within its forward arc, and you get a move 1 turn per phase, unless otherwise stated. And that turn is a maximum of 90 degrees. You can move into your rear arc if you wish, but you're, again, 1 inch counts as 2 inches. Nice and simple.
Simple.
Good at killing titans. They're good at killing garrisons, that kind of stuff. They can split fire, which is a powerful ability. Kind of needed because they're quite expensive, aren't they?
Well, they get very expensive. The bigger titans for sure. I wonder if warhounds. I suppose they're going to have a higher movement characteristic. I wonder if warhounds have got some sort of special rule on them themselves that allows them to be a slightly nippier or more agile. But otherwise, all titans are operating in the same way, from warhounds right up to war masters. But
they have the special rule, agile.
Oh, here we go. Right.
There we go, you see. So
thought there might be something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. And there are a lot of special rules, as we said. And this is a kind of, I'm not 100% how I feel about these all the time. You can make you can turn twice during its movement instead of the usual one.
Sense. And they're going to have a higher movement characteristic, etc.
Yeah, I'm off the page now. I'm going to go back and have a look because I'm intrigued. Movement 7 inches. So, yeah, they can get around the back and what have you, but they're 330 points.
Yeah.
It's a lot of points for something with 4 wounds. It's got 2 void shields, fair enough, but it's only got 4 wounds. If you're rolling around the corner with, a squadron of 4 tanks with some big weapons on, you can cause some problems. So, all good, especially if you can get them in the rear. They can split fire again. You say and if you destroy them, you roll a d6 for each model within 3. If you have 6 or fewer starting wounds, or 5 inches if you have 6 or more. On a 4+, you take a hit with an AP of -1 or a -2 if it's a big one. So they still blow up, but it's very, again, fits into the simple rules system. And as we say, and then on top of that, we build in. So we read out a special rule here: weapons traits. We've got what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh blimey!
Yeah, it's a lot.
7. They're not full pages, all of them. 8, 9 pages. So not all full pages of different weapon traits, from accurate, where you get to reroll hits, to anti-tank, which basically are AP 0 against infantry or cavalry, which is quite a nice way of doing. We'll go into those bits later on about how they've managed that. Bypass weapons, ignore void shields. It's demolisher weapons can damage structures. Ignores cover for you want to send up and get some people out of a building. Send up a big flamer that ignores cover, that kind of thing. Light weapons.
Quick tally. It's 44 weapon traits, and it's kind of in this and in the special rules. I haven't counted those up yet, but there's less of those, but still a large number. It's going to be in the interaction of those special rules. Even in the Warhammer community previews of the game started to give a hint of that, and you start thinking, crikey, I have to remember the differences and the different interactions between anti-tank, light AT, anti-personnel, or whatever that.
I don't think it's
but actually, I don't think it's as bad as it first appears.
So some of these rules aren't going to be on many things, or they're going to be on specific things. So certain rules are going to be on big machines that are different. Cool. Light as a weapon trait basically means you can't wound a vehicle, super heavy vehicle, knight or titan. Like, you're quickly going to go, it's light. I can't even hurt those things. Cool. Light anti-tank means I'm AP 0 against tanks. Basically, vehicle, super vehicle, blah 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 blah. Cool. So light AT works like, what do you call it, but in reverse. The anti-tank weapons, but in reverse.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
kind of thing. So you're going to pick up like rapid fire 6s to hit, score 2s. You're going to remember those. Psi weapon. How many times are you going to use that?
Yeah, if you use it, pulse, those sort of things. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you have those weapons, you will know those rules. So there are a lot of rules.
But I think they can be sort of shortened. They can be put into a shorthand and a reference, and I think you'll have a reference sheet beside you. You won't be looking through the rule book every 5 minutes. These are not lengthy rules like that. Even the special rules, I don't think, are going to be like that. I think you're going to have little cheat sheets, and this game will fly.
And as we said, you're not going to be using all these rules all the time, and some of them are very easy to remember as well. Like, I think the light and that will be easy to remember. Rapid fire, pretty simple to remember. Right, so you're going to get those, and if they're used a lot as well, then you're going to be seeing them more often. Engine killer, what does that do? Okay, cool. It's only when hitting a super heavy knight or titan. All you have to do is remember when you use that rule. Like, okay, I need to look it up when I hit those big things. And again, as I say, I'm sure you'll ignores covers pretty straightforward. What it allows you to do.
I'm enjoying Phosphex.
I haven't even looked at Phosphex.
Phosphex models engaged with an enemy detachment with Phosphex special rule gain no positive modifiers to their CAF.
That's a special rule rather than a weapon type. Cool.
Yeah, I've jumped ahead a bit there, but yeah.
Special rules, again, lots of them. But again, lots of them are specific. Deep strike, drop pod, flyer, stuff you're going to be using as you go through. Independence, quite an interesting one.
Yeah, all knights get that, apparently. So all knights, they are in a detachment, kind of, for coherency. They can be within 6 inches for coherency. But you can give them individual orders, which is cool.
Yep, super cool. So what universal special rules allow you to do is then, again, mix up units, give them the flavour from those. 40k moved away from them, but has sort of gone back to them a little bit.
Yeah.
They try to name every single rule, and it's like, well, yeah, if it does the same thing, call it the same thing. Haven't talked about embarking and disembarking vehicles. Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
We said we'd give an overview.
Yeah. Don't want to get too much into that. And then we got missions, which I haven't really looked at the missions.
No, I have had a look at the sort of putting together an army, because of course that's where your mind goes to with stuff going on pre-order. You start thinking about, what's this going to look like? And it's, they've presented it in the style that most of the modern games do, with an open play, a narrative play, and a match play type of format. Open play being do whatever you like, as long as you agree it. Narrative play, less so, but still working within rules of having a points value, etc. And match play taking that a bit further with sort of the way you play missions and things. This looks like it's a sort of contemporary version of all of those. It's giving you guides on how to put those together, which seems quite tight with all of that, much like we saw with some of these sort of competitive play guides and things that came out later for things like Titanicus. Putting an army together is quite straightforward, though.
Oh, before we do that, so we got 12 missions. I'm not going to get into them. Lots of them have 4 or 5 or 6 objectives. There's secondary objectives in that as well. What's interesting is capturing objective markers. At least one model within 3, blah, 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 blah. But there's a tactical strength value, shall we say. If both players have models within 3 inches, you calculate the total tactical strength. If you have at least double to that of your opponent, you capture it or retain control of it. Otherwise, it's contested. So it stays in the hands of whoever held it previously, unless it was uncaptured. So Titans have a tactical strength of 0, so people want to make Titan armies. Brilliant. You can't capture objectives if 2 players are after the same one, because that's the only time it comes in. Knights have 1, vehicles and super heavy vehicles have 2, cavalry and walkers have 3, infantry have 5. So 1 infantry base is worth 5 knights. So infantry is important to be able to capture objectives. Not not be all and end all, but if you want to go in and contest objectives and win them, infantry's how you're going to do it. So cool. So how do we make an army?
Well, you are doing it, as you've already alluded to, through the organising into formations, and I don't think there's a direct parallel to that, really. I suppose the closest you have to that is what we would call force organisation charts, I suppose, in and detachments, I suppose, in larger games like 40k and Heresy. But you first of all, you determine whether or not you are a traitor or a loyalist. You have to declare an allegiance, and they've hinted that they may look at other allegiances later on, but that's what we've got to start with. And in theory, that will then allow you to pick only allow you access to certain things. But at the moment, you're open to everything. They haven't got anything that's locked to a specific allegiance. After that, you choose a primary army list. So you are picking from, at the moment, you have a choice of 2, really. You have Astartes, you have Space Marines, or you have the Solar Auxilia. Your primary army list is going to be making up to 70% of you must spend at least 70% of your points from your primary army list. So only maximum of 30% is going to come from something else, which can either be an allied army list, so of one of the other army list types. So if you've got 70% Space Marines, you can have 30% Solar Auxilia, or a strategic support element, which is those things that don't fit neatly into a complete army list currently.
Yeah.
So things like Titans or Knights. You then assemble those. So once you've picked your primary army list, you're picking formations. Formations are collections of detachments. They don't operate as such on the tabletop. You don't have to keep your detachments in certain arrangements. They operate independently of each other. But for purchasing purposes and sort of gaining special rules, formations are how you are organizing your army. You must have one formation from your primary army list for each full 1,500 points. So you're going to have two formations in a 3,000 point game, which they sort of suggest in this is the what they consider standard in inverted commas. But
that minimum of one.
Yes, minimum of one.
Minimum of one. Cool.
Minimum of one per 1,500 points for your primary army list. So then, and similarly, your secondary army list, your allied army list, is going to, it has to be from a formation as well. So you can't just bring in random detachments. And that's kind of it, actually. Now, within that, with your formations, will set out what they're comprised of. And they're comprised of detachments that fill different roles, and that they're defined here in that section as detachment roles. So you've got things like an HQ detachment, a core detachment, support detachments, and on and on. And you've got the more specialist things like aircraft, artillery, heavy armor, battle tanks, knights. Transports are interesting in that they don't appear as a dedicated thing in the formation. If you've got the option, dedicated transports are allowed to be added onto a formation. They don't take up a slot, but you take them on a sort of 1-for-1 or a sort of capacity basis for to carry whatever's in the core detachment.
Yeah, they work outside the command, the structure. They're attached to units rather than detachments, should I say?
Exactly. Yeah. There's some very cool examples in the book. I thought was the way they sort of laid it out for people who like the kind of Space Marine Legion organization diagrams.
And we've only got 4 so far. I'm assuming we're going to get more coming through. So I'm going to start with the small ones. Aerial assault, you got HQ support, 2 core is your compulsory. Optional support, 2 support, 1 core, 1 vanguard, 2 air support. But for this, dedicated transports. Legions Astartes detachment can upgraded with Storm Eagles or Legion Thunderhawks as dedicated transports.
This is only 4. This is the 4 formations that are in the Space Marine army list, obviously. Yeah.
Yes. So that is, you're not just buying tanks. You can buy flyers. All detachments do not have the flyer. Must begin the game embarked on the flyers. Cool. So that that whole aerial assault detachment has to be, formation has to be flying. But of course, you could take multiple aerial assault formations, or you could mix that with the light company per se. And what's interesting, so as you look through the attachments, so this one's battle tank, 2 battle tanks, 1 heavy armor compulsory, 1 light armor, 2 battle tanks, 1 heavy armor optional, and then 1 of air support or heavy armor, which is quite a nice way of doing that, I think. Garrison force, HQ support, crew, core bastion as your compulsories, 2 more bastions, core blah 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 blah, and then heavy armor or artillery as your optional, and then your demi company, which I think is going to get used, quite a lot, because you've got a lot of options with it. HQ support,
it's
2
really
cores.
Flexible. Yeah,
it's super flexible. You can have 1 light armor or air support on top of your transport support vanguard, blah blah blah, and then 1 artillery battle tank or heavy armor. So heavy armor is quite limited outside of just quite limited. Outside of it, if you take a Legion armored company, you can have up to 3 if you take no flyers. Otherwise, it's 1 on each of them. Artillery is very limited, which is quite interesting. And I think we're going to get different formations coming forwards, which play around with that. But the heart of the Legion for the formations must be Legion tactical detachments, but they get tactical strength +1.
As long as an infantry is supporting them. So it's building on that combined arms thing. Interestingly, of those 4, though, there's 4 formations, only the Legion Demi companies really got a special rule as such in the heart of the Legion. Yes, the Legion Aerial Assault kind of has, but that's just telling you you're going to need to make everything in planes. Yeah.
But there's lots of room there. You can see how they're going to build on that going forwards. You haven't got there's no drop assault detachment yet. Obviously, we haven't got the drop pods. Haven't got an assault detachment with jump packs. Again, we haven't got the jump pack troops. You can see all of that coming.
We've got the jump pack troops. They're on the basic frame.
Well, no, you haven't got. You got minimal. I mean,
granted, a taster, same Terminator companies.
You can have it. Yeah,
and speeders. Yeah, there's going to be a fast assault one. Yeah,
but on top of all that, you also choose. If you're choosing a Legion, you choose a Astartes special rule. Now, this is interesting. So each formation, must be given one of the Legion rules. What's interesting is if you take multiple legions within different formations, they each get their Legion rules.
Yes.
But they only apply to those formations.
But it's formation is where you claim it. You don't claim it at the detachment level. So you can't have a formation mixed up of different legions.
No. However, we won't get into all the different special rules because, again, we'll be here all night. It's quite long already. If we look at, say, the 3rd Legion, Emperor's Children, once per battle, an army that includes at least one formation consisting entirely of Emperor's Children models may choose to win initiative instead of rolling. So that special rule affects your army rather than the models within that detachment. So if we take a look at White Scars, all White Scars models gain with Jink get +1 to their Jink. Right, but that's only affecting everyone within that formation. Now, I have seen someone suggest, more than one, I think, person suggest that why doesn't every army have a unit, have a formation, a small formation of Emperor's Children to gain that advantage?
That's quite a limiting thing to do, though, because 3,000 point game, you're only going to have 2 formations. So fully half of your formation.
I thought it was minimum of 1.
True. Okay.
1,500 points.
True.
So you could
minimum of 1. Okay, so you could have more.
You could take 1 HQ, 1 support, and 2 core, or you could take 3, 1 battle tank, 1 heavy armor, and get 1 turn where you're going to have the initiative the turn you want to get some charges.
Yeah, true. Just have it as a small thing. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Haven't played the game. Is having initiative a big enough thing to warrant that? Don't know. Sounds like it could be quite useful, but it's vastly reduced with alternating activations. To be fair, because of the nature of the game, unlike Titanicus, you're less likely to have that one big charge that really needs to hit home. You can, don't get me wrong, but yeah, it's cool. We won't go into a solo auxiliary because we're going to be here forever, but similar principles with the way they work in their formations. I'm trying to find them. Yep. Probably bigger because of the points values.
But a similar principle in that you've got a sort of a combined arms, slightly infantry heavy one. You've got an armoured company, and again, a pioneer company. Yeah. That's it, actually. There's only 3. Yeah.
But we're going to see more come from that, I'm sure. The strategic asset formations are currently...
well, they don't really come in formations per se.
No, but they're called formations.
Yeah, true.
They have compulsory detachments. Either Legion Support has a Titan, Knight Household Lance has a Lance, a compulsory detachment of Knights. So you can add in 1 Titan or 1 Knight per strategic asset formation, or 1 Knight detachment, should I say. So a detachment of Knights can be, an Acastus Knight banner starts at 1, but you can add 1, so you can only have 2 Acastus Knights, Questoris Knights. They're detachment upgrades, aren't they? That can be added on. Oh yes, that's right. And then you can add on Armigers and Moirac onto them. Warhounds detachment size 1. You can go up to 3 Warhounds in a detachment, which is quite cool. Just having a little look to see if the others.
I was just trying to see, because in the kind of examples
Reavers, everything else is 1.
Yes, in the kind of colour plates they give here, and they're just sort of colour schemes, but they have sort of an image there of a warlord and 2 warhounds, and you thought, oh, can you do that? You can, but it would be an enormous game.
Yes,
because it's only 30% of your points can be spent on these things.
And also, so how many? Remind me again. Taking the strategic assets, they're limited, 1 per formation. Is that right?
Yes, there's 1 per formation you've got. So if you've got,
again,
you can't have more support.
Factor.
Yeah, exactly. You can't have more support formations than you've got primary.
If you want 3 individual warhounds running around, you have to have 3 formations to then be able to take them.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff,
and be a game. Yeah,
970
points. Enormous. Yeah.
Well, 30%. Yeah, just over 3,000 points, isn't it? So.
Oh, okay. So not as big then. Okay.
No. Yeah, but hefty chunk of your points are going to be in that. Should we have a quick look at the actual unit cards? So we have got rules for every legion. Little rules. 1,000 Suns models with a commander special rule gains shield generator 6+ special rule. Yeah, cool. That kind of thing. Ultramarine model may reroll hit rolls of 1 when firing upon an enemy detachment that already has 1 or more hits scored against it. Classic Ultramarines. They're one minor rule. That's not going to change the game fundamentally, which with everything else going on is probably not a bad idea, but with room to expand going forwards.
Some of them are more complicated than others.
Yes,
you can even just see that by how short they are. I mean, as you said, 1,000 Suns is a particularly short one and straightforward. Most of them somewhere in between. The Dark Angels one seems to be quite complex because it's to do with their formation of the hexagrammaton. Yeah, there's some complexities in there. However,
let's take a look.
Flavors, yeah.
Let's take a look at a Legion's tactical detachment point. So card. So you've got your points listed. You've got your what should we call it? The label of what the unit type is, and this is all laid out right at the front of the book, which is quite annoying when you want to jump between stuff, but is typical of just me wanting to be in 2 places at once.
Oh, is this what you mean? The explanation of what's what?
Yeah. So you got detachment type. So the number is the bracket. So infantry 1. They are scale 1. Detachment size is the number of bases within that detachment. So tactical detachment, should I say, starts at 4, and then you get the name of that necessary thing. Now, if there's an upgrade for it, like Terminators, as I say, the core detachment can have the tactical detachment can have Assault Marines and Terminators. They have their own separate subcards that go with it, with each of the labels. So you have movement, nice and easy. Movement save, close assault factor, morale and wounds. Tactical Marines save 5 up, close assault factor of 2, morale 3. Terminators save 4 up, close assault factor of 4, morale 3. Invulnerable save 6+. They've got other rules with it, bulky, deep strike, implacable, and all that. But you can see even Terminators have only got a save of 4 up. And then you've got all their weapons options listed as well. Range, how many dice you fire, what you need to hit, AP, and then any traits. So bolt guns.
It's surprisingly more adjustable. These detachments are more. So, I mean, the Legion tactical detachment, I hadn't realised until we see this.
Yes.
But you can add on all of those unit types within the tactical detachment, or go and take them as their sort of dedicated detachment on their own.
There are 4 upgrades you can take. Each purchase can be taken multiple times. Each upgrade increases detachment size by 2. So you can have tactical legionaries at 12 points in this example. So you can have 2 more for 12 points. Cool. You can go up to 10 or whatever. You can have plasma tactical support legionaries in there instead if you want a bit more punch, or missile launchers if you want a bit more different punch, or you can bring the Terminators and Assault Marines for different types of units. Assault Marines move 7. There's different stuff going on, obviously, if you're doing those. If you want to be in Rhinos, of course, you're not going to take the Terminators or the Assault Marines. But yeah, as a mixed detachment, that's super cool because your Legion Assault detachment only allows you to have Assault Marines. Your Plasma Guns detachment, they're proper support detachments. So you've got the tactical detachment, which is multiple kind of different types in one, or you can break them down and have individual detachments if you want that flexibility.
And what's interesting is there's subtle variations in that, because the Legion Assault detachment, the Assault Marines have the jump packs special rule. If you take Assault Marines as part of a Legion tactical detachment, see, there's the idea that they're sort of supporting their detachment, and independent.
Yes.
Which means that they can be given separate orders, and means that they can be 6-inch coherency. So they're sort of operating perhaps on the flanks, or they're holding back and then leap forward when they're needed in an assault or a countercharge. That's actually more subtle and more adjustable than I expected it to be. I was thinking these are all going to be sort of dedicated detachments and that's it. But actually, there's some little subtle things in there which are going to be quite good fun, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it's straightforward and simple. If we take Legion Dreadnought Talon, Contemptor Dreadnoughts, cool, they're tough. They've got 3 different weapons options. Oh yeah, you can also have some Leviathans if you want. If you don't want to take a separate Leviathan detachment, you can add a couple in. Yep, add 2 Leviathans into your Contemptor detachment if you wish. And they all work kind of the same. Predators are predators, different weapon types. Deredeos are separate from those other ones, but there's no reason why they can't again mix these up going forwards as required. There's a lot of options. What's nice is all the weapons are included in the points.
Yes.
Now, how balanced they are, don't know. It might be that you're always looking at certain weapon types, but bearing in mind the way building army works could be complicated. Adding in individual points could have been a real pain. Frankly.
I think it really would have been. I think it would have been grim. Having to do. I think that would have been also the bookkeeping needed for that would have been, oh dear, as opposed to just being look at the model, something like that. I mean, that would have been a bit rough, I think. I'm surprised they didn't put Land Raiders in. Obviously, I think they'll be added. Obviously, they're going to expand the range hugely.
They've shown us,
you've got to have certain, you've got to have certain limits on that. So that Land Raiders and drop pods and things. But yeah,
the problem is this book is what are we at
242 pages.
Yeah, 240 odd pages, with a lot in there already. We already know they've shown off the Land Raiders, they've shown off the bikes, speeders, like the drop pods, the new funky drop pods, the shield drop pods, whatever they're called. Like there's a lot to come. Outside of Legion specific stuff, who knows what they're going to do with that? Super heavy mastodons, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like there is a lot to come, and that's before you get into the epic only models as well.
Yeah.
Whether they do them and things like that. So fill up another decent sized book like with that, because otherwise your supplement books I think potentially could be quite small.
Because
how much you're adding in, it's not like adding in, we don't know what they're going to do with, let's say, with Legion specific stuff. But even then, like at this scale, how much is a Palatine Blade unit different than an Assault unit?
Yeah.
That's probably a special rule or two different at most.
Yeah.
So.
And in terms of model, it might simply be a different paint scheme on the Assault Squad model or a despoiler type model.
You're just there and give them give them a special rule that normal Terminators don't have. Suddenly they just errand, or give them +1 to something, or
slightly higher cap,
whatever you can do, something minimal. Because frankly, does it matter if these 10 Terminators are just errand or not when they're facing off against Titans and other things? Not really. They might have a slight tactical advantage.
You've got to keep the sweep of it there, haven't you?
Yeah.
I do. I mean, it does run that slight risk of your army list is going to be split across multiple books. I mean, that's not a risk. That's going to be happening. It
was always going to be because of the nature of wanting to keep producing product. However, if you buy the cards, you've got the cards there which have that information on, and you can build, because again, the cards have on the back like add 1 model to this for 35 points, add 2 models for this for 70 points.
Do we know do the cards cover those units that are not in the book?
No, not. I don't know where I put mine. They're like aside somewhere that I can't get in reach. I think it's the models that are in here.
Right.
And they have the form. If I correct, they have the formations as well.
Yeah, so, you have the formations.
Yeah, you have the formations and
the detachment cards. But the 2 sets, but it'll only be for what's in this initial book. Okay.
Yeah.
Probably.
And that's about it. I say without going into the nitty gritty. And we haven't played the game, so that the value of that becomes lessened anyway. I think it looks funky. I think it looks really cool. I think it looks simple enough to understand the game.
Yeah.
And then the complexity comes from making the from your tactical decisions and that kind of thing. So building your army, choosing your orders, and so with objective-based gaming as well adds another level of complexity onto that.
I do think those missions did look quite cool. I mean, it's just a starter set really of 6 missions, but things like there's
12, isn't it? 12,
go and get those. Oh, is there as many as that? I thought it was
12. You roll off to see which table of 6. There are 6 secondary objectives. There's a lot of missions.
Okay, and they are quite varied. I mean, I was looking at those. I mean, you've got the standard sort of take and hold, seize and hold, those sorts of things, no man's land arrangements. But because of the number of objectives and what you're doing with them, I thought the cool one. There's one devastation, which is it's got 6 objectives: 2 in your deployment zone, 2 in the middle, 2 in the enemy's deployment zone. If you get to the ones in the enemy's deployment zone, you can destroy them, and they're no longer available to anyone to claim. It's just little things like that. You suddenly think, okay, this could be that's quite different to some of the others. I think it's only got, okay, I'm going to have some units that are just all out assault are going to go and wreck those ones, so you can't just have something sitting on them. I think there's quite a bit of variety in those missions, which I think would be good fun. Yeah, and I think, and that's before secondaries. Yeah, just looking into it as well, the way they've designed the weapons. So anti-tank weapons, great. You've killed. Your las cannon's taken 1 Marine out of that detachment. Like, it's so irrelevant that it doesn't matter. Like whereas okay, my heavy bolters are firing at that Kratos. Well, tough luck. You cannot hurt it unless maybe you get around the back, and then you might have a slight chance. So you need, if you go overly heavy one way or the other, you could find yourself up against it, and that's not necessarily a problem, because you don't have to kill all the enemy to win the game. So you can play around that, getting the balance of your army right
it's going to be tricky. But if you can manage to get it right, then you're going to be able to stay in a game where maybe the enemy has the right tools to deal with you. You can still play that game because you're like, okay, cool, I can try and keep my infantry alive. Jump onto that objective, take it off of him. Get ahead on points, that kind of thing. And things like literally, cool, I have got this big tank. Oh, that unit's going to be a real problem. Cool, I could engage and pin them because I'm bigger than them. And that, it's going to remove the shooting that I want to do, but I'm going to gain more over here by them not being able to do X, that kind of thing. It looks fun. That we've got a small core of people at the club who are really excited to get into it. And the box at the price value it's at means they can definitely get started. How quickly we grow into bigger armies might be determined by the price of some of those boxes, just because of the nature of how much you might need to make armies. But some of those players will have Titans, which
I was going to say that. I think Knights and Titans gobble up points really quickly, and at the very least, the starting points. I think those could be
obviously only 30% of your army.
Yeah, but still,
it helps.
It's getting you some of the way there, isn't it? Yeah.
And down the line, maybe we do see a knight list. Be interesting to see how they manage it, or scenarios that allow mana pools or what have you, that kind of thing. But and hopefully down the line, mech, demons, maybe, that kind of thing as well, potentially.
Certainly, Mechanicum lend themselves pretty well
Custodes.
to the Epic as a setting. Yes.
I'd love to see Custodes and Sisters being auxiliary or allies only, that kind of thing.
I do wonder if Custodes, it depends because they're very popular, aren't they? But I could see them being a bit like Sisters, particularly being resin.
Oh
because
yeah,
they've done resin infantry before. Clearly, vehicles suit that, but they've done resin infantry before in this scale, slightly smaller with things like the Tau.
And if they ever do, and depending on what they do with Legion specific stuff as well. I can't imagine they're not going to do the Primarchs at some point in some way, because why would you not? It'd just be super cool. There's lots of scope there, and going the other way. People have talked about the Imperator Titan. Personally, in AT or this as a game, I'm not bothered by it, but they'll sell a big model to hobbyists.
Nostalgia alone, and just because it would look cool.
Just making a cool model alone.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
The Warlord has made. We talked about it in the show a few months ago. The Warlord has, turnover wise, made a lot of money for GW, and bearing in mind the profit margin on resin, obviously there are issues around doing resin and stuff and whatever, means it is a lot of money. You bring out an Imperator and you've got your Titanicus players and your Imperialis players and people who just want an Imperator because they're cool.
It's a cool model. It's a cool model for a project.
So it's these things
also,
are never
it's giving them a playground as well. Now they can return to this as a playground for war machines that you can't so easily do in a larger scale, which is what Epic did originally. Most of these games. These are Capital Imperialis, Leviathans. Or what used to be Leviathans.
The tank Leviathans,
we've got the Hellbore, kind of reliving itself as it's an Ordinatus, isn't it? But the Ordinatus is what I mean. Mechanicum lend themselves to it perfectly because you've got these crazy big machines.
Also, so do Corrupted Traitor Legions with the history of the stuff they've got within that as well. lots of opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, think of some of the cool big demons they could do if they did.
I was just thinking about having
amazing.
Coming off the back of reading The Siege at the moment, big demons could be very good.
Indeed. Anything else?
There's lots more, but not for today.
No, I think we're going to have to. So weird. Like, we're 174 episodes into this show. When I started this show, we had lots to talk about. There was a big period of time where it was like, oh shoot, what are we going to talk about this month? Well, yeah, I was recording twice a month. What are we going to talk about? We need a topic. At the moment, it's like we're going to have to push that topic back a month. We're going to have to push it back a month. We're going to have to push it back a month. I've got a list of stuff to talk about. We've now got multiple game systems set in Heresy. We've got stuff coming out. We've got previews. We've got loads of events. The book series is coming to an end. Doesn't mean the setting's coming to an end, but got all that aspect of it that we can still talk about, because we've got still loads of books to talk about. We've got all the Legios that we haven't gone through. There's so much going on heresy-wise that keeping up as a podcast that records in theory once a month, even though this will be like the 4th episode in 2 months, is it's hard to keep up, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I think we're probably done for now.
For today, I think that was a pretty good light intro.
Yeah, hopefully you'll see our models out and about on all the socials. There's going to be lots of people painting up cool stuff. Really look forward to seeing what like Henry and Nicole paint do.
I think there's going to be some cool stuff. Yeah, I really want to see their stuff and others. I think people are going to really run with this as it starts to emerge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm hoping to see some like more alternative color schemes as well, because I think this scale almost lends itself more to doing that kind of stuff. Like some, we talked about it last episode about some of those alternative color schemes. I think this, to see your grey Emperor's Children would be, or White Scars would be really super cool. But yeah.
And it doesn't feel like quite such the commitment, does it? Sort of set of the infantry here, you can smash through those.
Also,
pretty quickly and effectively.
Yeah, doing camo at this scale becomes a bit easier because it's more of an abstract thing. So that kind of stuff as well. That kind of thing. But we shall see. Let's call it there. We'll be back next episode with demons.
Exciting times, Greg. Exciting times. Speak to you soon.
Take it easy. And thank you for listening to another episode of The Imperial Truth. This is third time lucky trying to get this outro out. My baby has interrupted the other two. This is why I haven't got any of my Space Wolves painted and shown up. There are some sitting in my desk, some tiny rhinos and Kratos and Contemptors, but unfortunately haven't quite made it past that because frankly I've been looking after a not 100% little one, which is always fun, but hopefully I'll get them up for you. Please nudge me if I haven't soon, because I do want to get them done and want to get them shown off. I am recording this as the evening of the release day or pre-order day, should I say, for Legions Imperialis, and I've had a kind of look around at what some other people are saying and had a look around at what some other people are doing with the models, and generally what people have been doing with the models have been awesome. BB Miniatures is, I think, on Instagram. Go and check him out. Wonderful guy, amazing painter, doing some amazing spatial stuff for Imperialis. White Scars stuff for Imperialis, and indeed for Heresy itself. And there's been some fun little posts as well. Warhammer Girl making some earrings of hers at Electric Eve M. magnetizing all the little tanks we talked about, the possibilities of magnetizing stuff. It can very much be done. I'm not sure I'm ever going to bother, but it can be done. Obviously, as we said, we did an overview. We haven't played the game. There's a lot more to get into in the nitty-gritty of the game. Once we play the game, we'll come back and review this, I'm sure, and we want to play the game anyway. There are half a dozen people at the club, I think, who want to play it, so fingers crossed I can have regular gaming there. And it is a heresy set game. It will become part of the show as we move forward, but as I say, there's lots of things to do, lots of stuff to catch up on, lots of ideas, so we will get back to slightly more regular recording schedule, unless GW drop another book on us that lands midway through the month, of course. We might end up doing this again, but until then, hopefully we'll be on the more usual schedule. We've got ideas, as I say, but if you have ideas for what was talked about, if you have feedback on what we've said, if you've got, I don't know, whatever you think might be beneficial for us to hear, then please get in contact. Greg at theimperialtruth.com. Also on Twitter, imperial_truth, and I'm Child of Fang on Instagram as well. If you want to go and get some Legions Imperialis stuff and you haven't ordered any yet, then Element Games is a top-notch provider of all your toys, and you can support the show by purchasing from them. And also, we should have in the show notes the Element codes for both myself and Howard. So if you are going to purchase from Element and you want to double your crystals and don't necessarily have someone that you like kind of constantly give to, then feel free to do that. We have the Patreon as well. We have some merch. There's a link tree on my Twitter. I need to copy the link over to other stuff. Actually, it's one thing I'm trying to find the time to do, is to sit down and do all that. But as I say, life's a bit messy at the moment. Not in a bad way, but I've got a whole host. I've got like a page worth of jobs to do that I haven't touched yet. So getting around to sorting out the website is on there. I might have to call in some favours because getting around to it, as I say, is getting tricky. But hey, at some point things will be quieter, as you keep saying every month, until I retire maybe, and even then, who knows. I'll be sitting around doing too many games still, but hey, it's all fun. Beyond that, I suppose the one thing we could do is open up for questions about Legions Imperialis. Might not be a bad idea. Hopefully the next episode will be out about the time or just before it's Legions is actually in people's hands, so we can play around with that and look forward to more cool stuff coming for it. And that's about all I've got. I think we're going to leave it there. We're going to be back in a few weeks anyway. So until next time, you have been listening to The Imperial Truth.